What's that letter from? The attorney. There it is. Okay, all right, we're going to call the meeting to order. Valerie, would you like to do the honors?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, announcements. Select Board will meet on the following dates. Regular meeting at 6 p.m. October 26th and November 9th. Work sessions prior to the regular meeting will start at 5 p.m. All the above meetings will be held in Town Hall unless otherwise posted. Weather observations for the month of September are posted in the front lobby at Town Hall. Main Street trick-or-treating will be Friday, October 23rd, 2009, from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Trick-or-treating for the town of Plymouth will be Saturday, October 31, 2009, from 5:30 to 7:30. Okay, we have the minutes of the work session on the 28th. Does anyone have any comments or approval? We have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Those in favor of approving the work session minutes for the 28th of September, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes, the work session minutes are approved. The minutes for the regular meeting, the September 28th. Are there any comments, revisions? Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the September 28 regular meeting. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Under agenda review, we have at the work session formed a subcommittee. It's made up of Butch Cushing, myself, and Paul Freitas to meet with the fire chief at some date in the near future to discuss procedures for future contracts, future ambulance contracts with the outlying towns. We'll announce the date of that meeting, what, Paul? Next couple days?
It doesn't have to be announced.
All right. Okay, we don't have anything under appointments. Correspondence, we have a letter, we've received a letter from Donald H. Shankowitz, an attorney at law in Wilton, New Hampshire, regarding the legal status of an 1801 Wentworth to Bridgewater Highway. This is a piece of road that is currently under some discussion between Bruce Ahern, Bruce and Janice Ahern, and their neighbors, the Hills. The attorney has stipulated in his last paragraph that the Aherns need to ensure access to their barn until an agreement or accommodations have been reached. Therefore, if I have not heard from you by October 21, 2009, the Aherns will proceed to clear obstructions in the old roadway sufficient to allow vehicles to pass and will plow such route during the course of the winter. This is a Class 6 road. It's not maintained by the town, and we don't plan to have it plowed either by the town or the Aherns. As far as responding to their this request by the 21st of October, we've turned it over to our attorney, who will respond. It's not possible for us to meet this date because of the nature of the Board of Selectmen's schedule, namely that we meet every 2 weeks, and our next meeting is stipulated the 26th of October, and at that point we may or may not have a response from our attorney, so we're going to await his response before we answer this letter. Under any circumstances, Mr. Ahern's desire to clear obstructions and plow the roadway is not in order, because it is a town road, and we want it to be left exactly the way it is until such time as we have a response from our attorneys and can address the issue. So, beyond that...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Paul, is this a letter for appointment, the Conservation Commission?
Right.
Okay.
We have, yeah, we've had a resignation.
I was going to add it when we get to the appointments.
Okay.
All right.
That just came in, but
All
I
right.
think we're going to be looking for things to talk about until 6:30.
Okay. All right. We'll wait then till...
All right. We don't have any visitors, do we? No.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
mentioned at this time that the board, in the work session, also decided to start meeting every other.
Yeah, we voted in the work session to start having 5 o'clock work sessions at 5 p.m. on the odd Mondays between the the Board of Selectmen meetings. These will be every Monday between board meetings until further notice, and they'll start at 5, and we'll...
With the first one starting on October 19th.
Is that when this thing starts? My God.
October 19th.
All right. So the first one will be October 19, and they'll be between the regular meetings until such time as we decide not to do it anymore. All right. We don't have any covered the subcommittee. Are there any public comments? We have a hearing at 6:30, a public hearing at 6:30 to discuss the proposed public safety complex and the concept of building a new facility for the police to remove the old building and start the site work for a new fire station the following year. But right now, are there any public comments on anything so far?
Did we do other business?
Mr. Chairman, I think you have to go through the committee reports first, and then other business second.
Purchase order change.
Right, purchase orders.
Wait, all right.
We'll stick to the same
format on your schedule, skipping over the public hearing.
The,
Any visitors?
You're at chairman's comments.
yeah, I know. The chairman's comments, I discussed the letter from the attorney for Bruce Ahern on the,
You want to put
Okay.
down this land use permit and announce that so that people know they can get their permits? And I believe the permits required now?
No,
Are they wrong?
they go through the building inspector now, and Brian posts them down in the lobby.
so
The
the,
next thing on the agenda would be the change that we're making to the allotted amounts on purchase orders.
yeah, we voted at the work session to increase the amount of, that a purchase order can be, the approval of purchase orders by department managers from $1,000 to $2,000, and the town administrator from $4,000 to $5,000. This is just to cover the normal increases in costs that have occurred over the past several years. So we, as of right now, the board will allow purchase orders to be signed by department managers up to $2,000 and the town administrator to $4,000. To $5,000, I'm sorry, from $4,000 to $5,000. All right. We don't have any purchase orders, do we?
No.
Committee reports,
I have.
Valerie?
I attended the Plymouth School Board meeting. The primary thing they talked about was an agenda of proposed renovations and upgrades to the elementary school, which they indicated would cost a total of almost $3,500,000. Of that, they are going to attempt to get state building aid in the amount of about $2,100,000, and will propose a warrant before the school annual meeting of $1,400,000. And I've got details on the upgrades and so forth that they're proposing, if anybody would like to look at the list. It's pretty extensive.
How much was it?
The grand total was actually $3,494,638.
That's what they want to bond?
They're going to attempt to secure $2,096,783 from the state building aid. And apparently the state has changed their policy on building aid such that in order to even qualify for building aid, there's a minimum expenditure of $2,739,895 required of a town. So they decided to go for some projects that they might otherwise have postponed to future, so that they would exceed that minimum.
So we're going to spend more so we can get more.
Yeah, and there's that.
Like a sale, you know.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
What was the total? What was the town's portion we
The
want?
town's portion was going to be $1,397,855, almost 1.4.
Okay.
And that would be bonded.
That would be bonded.
And second, Paul and Brian Murphy and I also attended the North Country Council annual meeting. The highlight of that was that Patsy Kendall from Plymouth Transport Central, that new non-for-profit that she started up, I think, within the past year, was actually received an award, the Colonel Oliver Nelson Planning Award, before the council. And last but not least, I went to the Chamber of Commerce meeting, and they are going to have their annual internet auction. It'll run for 2 weeks, beginning Tuesday, November 24th, closing Monday, December 7th. And they're looking at it as an opportunity, another venue for holiday shopping. People can register to bid by going to the Chamber of Commerce website and clicking on auction, and apparently that gets you into their website, and you can work your way through all that they've got available. They've got some some pretty, overnights at the Balsams, Patriots tickets, quite a few packages that they're getting donations for, so. And that was what I
Okay,
had.
thank you. Butch?
I attended the planning board last week, and there was one project that was brought before the board as a preliminary by Dennis Prescott. He's with the XL Management Company, and it was a 4,000 square foot wooden frame building, single floor, and that's with the subdivision that's right across from the Sears store that's out on Tenny Mountain Highway. Also, young lady Madeline McClaney came before the board there to discuss about, she's working on part of her project for school. Part of her course is to, she wants to establish a committee on energy, subcommittee for the, to put together a energy chapter, maybe something that the board could look at to maybe use, and maybe even draft into maybe their, some of their procedures. She is looking for somebody to sit on that committee with her. She says it won't take a lot of time. They plan on meeting once a month, I think, something, yeah.
And didn't get a volunteer, wasn't Gilbert?
Yes, she got a volunteer off the board, Gilbert, right. And Jack Scarborough announced his resignation that night due to health issues. So, and that's it.
Okay. John?
Butch took over my position on the planning board last week.
All right.
Since I was in Iowa, enjoying 2 grandchildren.
In Iowa.
Iowa.
Yeah, were you enjoying Iowa?
Lovely.
Oh,
Flat
okay. All right.
Corn,
Yeah.
soybeans.
Okay, I met with the Plymouth Village Water and Sewer District. Stephen Call has a request that the town, the board of governors has a request that the town mark the storm sewers that drain into the river. This is, I guess, something that's been going on in a lot of towns. Manchester has probably done 3,000 or 4,000 of their storm drains. This would be something that would not cost the town anything. It's basically an educational project that Mr. Call is interested in pursuing. We would have the Plymouth State University and the high school would be asked to participate, and they would mark the storm drains that go into the river with something to the effect that says no dumping drains to river, and eventually we would get all of the storm sewers. This is something that a lot of the larger cities have been doing to avoid people putting all sorts of things, including motor oil and that sort of thing, that would empty right into the river and create all sorts of problems. So I told them that we would we do whatever we can to facilitate this. As I say, it's not going to cost the town anything, but they're going to get the high school and the Plymouth State University kids involved in it. I would I think it might be appropriate to have the board vote to facilitate this, just so that I can go back to the water district and advise them that we're going to do what we can to help them put this thing together. If you feel it's appropriate,
Do you have any more information on that?
well,
Do they have anything they're putting out, or?
no, they haven't really started yet. It's something that's been done in the larger cities south of here, Manchester and I think Nashua. And there's been a lot of concern about what gets dumped into, directly into the river from your downtown areas primarily. And most of these cities have, over the past 4 or 5 years, gradually marked all of the storm sewer drains as storm sewer drains, so people know not to dump whatever into them, because it goes directly to the river.
Is there any penalty for doing this?
No,
You could
no.
make
This is an ecological effort on the part of the towns, just to make people aware of the fact that these drains go to the river. They don't go through the sewage treatment facility.
Do you think that's going to stop people from doing it?
Well, I'm not too sure how extensive the problem is, or potentially could be, but I don't know if it would do that much harm to get involved in it, because I think what it does is it makes the kids aware of what the potential problems are, and that's really the big issue.
Yeah, and I think, to answer John's question, a lot of times people aren't really aware that those don't go through a sewer treatment plant.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and that's the concern, that you get, you might have some guy that changes the oil in his car and then runs out and dumps it in the storm sewer, thinking that that's okay. And that most of our storm sewers have been refitted to go directly into the river, because the sewage treatment plant was coming very close to the state's 85% capacity level. And a lot of it was because of the storm water that was going through the sewage treatment plant. And so they've changed a lot of these storm sewers to go directly to the river, and I think this is something that they want to do to just make people aware of the fact that it's a potential pollution issue. And I don't see any I don't see any harm in the town getting involved. It's not going to cost us anything, and it'll get the kids who are potentially the problem to understand what's going on. So I would like to go back to the Village Water and Sewer District at their next meeting and tell them that we have agreed to help wherever possible, and understanding that it's not going to cost the town any money. So if they're...
I think if we make a motion to support their, support it, or have a consensus of the board to support it,
Yeah.
and that would be, I think, adequate enough.
Yeah, that's what we need, just a consensus, and then I can take that back and
Did you
everybody...
make that motion, but did you make it?
Made that motion.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded that the board support the activities of the Plymouth Village Water and Sewer District to set up a program to mark the storm sewers with something to the effect that there would be no dumping, that it drains into the river. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So I will take that to the next district meeting. All right.
Other business.
Other business. Bond reduction request for the old Route 25 Blueberry Hill Road.
This is Mike McNally, the town engineer, and our planner, Miriam Bader, requesting that the bond, which was going to be released about 4 or 5 months ago, but we were waiting until the new highway superintendent was able to also check and weigh in on it. And our engineers found that everything that needed to be done has been done. And their attorney has been contacting us because they waited an extra 4 months.
Is this going to be how much of a reduction? Whole thing?
Just releasing the rest of the bond,
Okay.
whatever amount was left on it.
So the road has been finished to the satisfaction of the highway department?
Of the town engineer.
Okay. All right. So we need a vote on that, or?
Yes, you do.
Okay. So do I have a motion to reduce, well, you're talking reduce or just?
No, just a release of bond.
Release the bond. To release the bond for Old Blueberry Hill Road.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or Questions? Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So we can go ahead and release the bond. All right. That's about it, except, you want to start the public, it's 6:30,
Take a 5-minute recess.
all right?
I need to sign all of these.
Which need,
Oh,
They need to be signed on all copies or just...
just so. So you just made one too,
All right, black,
Okay.
black.
black, hot liquor women.
Yep.
I'd like to open the public hearing on a proposal for the public safety complex to discuss a concept for building a new facility for the police, remove the old building and start site work for a new fire station the following year. I guess the presentation should be made by Chief Clogston, who is chairman of the committee that worked this thing out. You want to come up, Chief? How are you? I hope so. Would you like to bring us up to speed on how we got to where we are and what the plan is?
Many hours of work. Okay, just to reiterate what this brought this on is the committee met numerous times. The biggest goal for the committee was to pick a site. In the years past, we've always designed a building without a site. So that was, I believe, about a year ago when we had the first public hearing on the public safety complex. There was no land for that. So that's what the committee was tasked with, was to find the land first and then build accordingly for that piece of property. If anybody's trying to look for a piece of property in the town of Plymouth, of a sizable chunk, which with the square footage of the building that we're looking at, a 40-person apartment, you're looking at 40 parking spaces and to design for growth. You're looking at an acre and a half. That would be for your building, your parking lot, and then you still have to have your green space per code. Nothing was available that we looked all around. There's nothing for sale. But we got looking at the properties that the town of Plymouth already owns. So we figured as opposed to buying land, we could work with property that we already have, which led us up to the police station site. And a lot of people didn't know, and I didn't know myself, is that where the current police station is right now, that's one of 2 lots side by each that we own. So we got looking at the sites, and we knew it was going to be tight. The site that is south of the current police station is pretty ledgy and some overgrowth. So we got a hold of the company that helped with the Meredith fire station. We went down and toured that station and talked with Andre from the Bowen Corporation, who helped design and place their station on a very small footprint. They did a really nice job. So he came up, took a look at the site. We had a topo map survey done of that particular site. And Mr. Piper graciously did some test pits so that we could find out what kind of earth we're looking at moving. So when all that was said and done, the Bowen Corporation came up and we told them what we were looking for square footage-wise parking, and he took the topo map and to go south of the PD, and this was with actually squeezing the building, so we would start off with something less than what we were looking for on the ledgy side. He was looking at a minimum of $700,000 to do the excavation there, which that figure was a little hard for us to swallow. With the test pits that Mr. Piper did, and the Bowen Corporation backed it up with a letter, is that I asked him, I said, make pretend like the police station is a vacant building, and with what we need for square footage, use Mr. Piper's test pit survey and give us a price on crunching the building and whatnot. It's all sugar sand for, I think we went down at least 12 feet and never hit ledge. And that price came up with putting the current police station in a trash can was $230,000, rough estimate. So basically, if the town's going to develop the piece of property that they have, the committee thought that, okay, we got to do this in a wise way. Let's not spend what I believe $700,000 was going to grow to $1 million easily with blasting and some unknowns. Was to the police station could fit with a lot less excavating and blasting south of them, and then we could go and get the dirt work done for a lot cheaper price. So, which led us to the point that we're at now, is that we had no other available sites. We looked at some. We even enlisted, we contacted an individual whose property was not for sale, but he said for the town, I'll give you a price on it, and that price for, I believe it was an acre, was $380,000, which there again, that was a little more than we thought that piece of property was worth. But, so with that, I believe that's where we're at. We got to move them to be able to develop that site in the most economically responsible way. That's all I got.
So, what was the figure to demolish the police department and get that site ready for, aside from the fact that we'd have to construct a new police department?
From Mr. Bauer, from the Byron Corporation, with a cost estimate was $230,000.
Okay, that's demolition and getting the site.
My thing was to him, and it says, including demolition and removal of existing police station building, grade the site, build retaining walls along the back of the wall for parking area. They estimated $230,000. If you want a copy of the.
So the plan went from building a fire department to the acceptable site, or the more acceptable site would be the one that the present police department's on. And the police department would fit relatively easily on the site that the empty portion of this lot, which would cost us close to $800,000 in site work to get it prepared for a fire department.
Right.
So we started out to build a fire department and ended up building a police department. The problem that I'm not too sure how we deal with it is at town meeting. Do we go with a warrant article to build a police department on, because we obviously have to do the police department first if we go into this program. Do we want to build the police department and prepare the site for the fire department, I gather. That's part of what we're going to go for. And but do I don't know if we would be going for approval to build the fire department, or we're going to do a separate warrant article at the town meeting the following year for a police, or for a fire department, having already torn down the police department and moved it to the lot next door and build it. My only concern is, it's fairly easy to say, okay, we'll tear down the police department, build a new one on the site that we were going to put the firehouse on. But we would have to budget considerably more money than we're talking about for just a police department on a warrant article this year if we wanted to include the fire department under the same warrant article. So I gather the strategy is to get the town to approve the construction of a police department on the site next to the current police department, and then next year go back and get approval for a warrant article to build a police department, or a fire department, which may or may not, I mean, either one may or may not fly. You sat in on the last meeting, and I don't know if you have any comments on what happened.
What I think the way this evolved was that being the piece of land, it was much more feasible to spend the money to use the land, and it would work out to the benefit of the town if the police department was actually built first. And because there was less excavation needed to put the police station in that southern lot. So that's how it happened, that the police station has happened to become the first thing on the list.
And we also looked at an alternative approach, and that'd be the piece of property that Alex Ray owns.
Right, and that's the one that came in at.
That was an acre and a half.
Yeah.
I think it was an acre and a half for 3.1 or $390,000.
Right, and the thing is that still is in a floodplain area.
Yeah.
But if we should happen to get that 100-year flood, then your emergency services has got to be evacuated.
So it's been pretty well determined that this piece of property, both where the police department is and where the fire department wants to put their, the entire piece is ideal because we own it, but the most reasonable approach is to build the police department where we had originally hoped to put the fire department because the site work would be considerably less. How we put that warrant article together, I guess first of all, we would look for comments from the public to what they think of the idea, and if those who felt it was a good idea, what would be the approach to seeing to it that we also provided for a fire department at the same time. So unless any board members have any comments, John, you were sat in on a number of the meetings.
I think we better hear what the public has to say before.
Pardon?
I think we better find out what the public wants before we get to...
So I think what we should do at this point is open this to public comment. And again, the plan would be to build the police department on the south side of this lot, because that's where the site work necessary is relatively minor compared to what we would have to do if we built the fire department there. And then after we tear down the old police department, we'd have to go up for another warrant article to build a fire department. Or if there's a way that anyone can see it being put together in one warrant article, I would think you're probably going to raise the price significantly. Does anyone have any comments on the concept? First of all, Mr. Keefe, you sat on the committee, so...
Yes, I'm on the committee. I just, from my perspective, I think one of the things we really wanted to accomplish tonight was, since this is such a radical shift in the direction that had been being talked about, we wanted to make sure we bring this before the public. To your question, Chairman Berman, on how we might present this, one thing that would seem to make sense to me is that we bond enough money to construct the police station and to design the fire station so that if there are economies of scale on the lot that might be accomplished in the design process, and we haven't gotten there yet. Mm-hmm. But here we've got a place, originally we were looking at a public safety complex thinking there was a lot of economies of scale that might be able to be accomplished by having some shared facilities. Well, we haven't really looked at this project yet to see if that could be accomplished on this site. But if we have the design money so that then we do the second bonding the following year, but we will have a full design, schematics, as well as solid price estimates so we know exactly what we're coming in with. And if there were economies of scale, we'd be able to know what they are and how they might be realized.
Yeah, this would not be a safety complex in the sense that we had originally thought of it, but it would be more like a municipal complex with the fire department and police department, separate buildings on the property.
Well, I guess I'm not sure, I don't know the site well enough to know if there's any way that some connection might be feasible if that meant that there were some economies of scale. So for example, if you build shower and locker rooms and you build them once, and then the next building in some fashion could be laid out and connected so that those same facilities could be used for both departments, you suddenly have just saved yourself potentially a substantial sum of money. Again, I don't know that, but it would seem wise for us to understand all those options and not build two buildings separate and distinct with two different companies, two different site plans, two different everything, if there were some way to build them together that made sense and saved the town money.
Mr. Piper, you were on the committee. Would you like to comment on this approach?
Well, I missed the last meeting when this shift took place, so But I came here tonight more to listen than anything else. I think Tim hit a very good note here. If we move forward in the direction that we're going to build a PD on the southern half of that property, and then build the fire department abutting it to the north. But as we're in the planning process, if it becomes apparent that there are, economies of scale that a combined facility would make sense, I think we need to consider that. I don't know enough about it. I know I've heard that it's not a good mix. I've heard that our communities have had problems with combined police fire facilities, whatever those problems are, but I think it's something that bears looking at. I mean, there will obviously be some economy of scale, I think, somewhere along the line. In the site, the PD is sitting on probably one of the best sites in town.
Yeah, for a fire department. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of land. There's a bunch of space here that's probably better suited than anywhere in the remaining portion of the land. So that's the only point.
Anyone else?
My concern on our design and build, I'm concerned about the police department not having their design. You're talking about crowding the police department new building into the new area, trying to maximize the space existing without getting into too much excavation. And my concern is, I think would be better to ensure that we have growth space for the police department as much as we need it for the fire department, because we always seem to make do with what we have for the police department. They've always used an existing structure or be in a very small space, and the potential for having the right amount of outdoor space for equipment. Also, we have catastrophic events usually becomes extremely crowded with accessory equipment, people, and it's always having to relocate and stuff. So that site is a good site. I think we should go in and excavate, spend maybe twice as much money as we were thinking, but maybe not the $800,000, and take out the rock now at the time, because later on it'll be 3 times more expensive, and we need that real estate, I think, for the police department's operation. So the concept's good. I just think we're not trying to go too cheap on the original site prep work at this year group, or 2010, because 2020, it's going to cost us a lot more money to do what we should have done at the beginning.
One of the things that hasn't been injected into this discussion is drop back to the original plan of putting the fire department on the southern end of the lot. That's one of the options that could be open to us. You spend the $800,000 and build the fire department there, and then you wouldn't have disrupting the police department or any of that, and then you deal with the police department as a separate issue somewhere down the road. But I don't know. I mean, yes, sir.
Was it my understanding was that the $800,000 was excavation and concrete. Was that right?
It's a foundation, right, Dick?
I thought it was excavation.
Yeah, that was. I think the foundation was included in the $800,000.
And the reason we moved back, we know that this site is a difficult site. There's no question about it. I mean, on the south end, there's no question it's a difficult site. The reason we moved back here is because I've been on the committee since day one, and we were talking land purchase prices of $600,000 before any site work, any concrete, anything else.
Yeah.
And the thought being that use our land, and if we're going to spend our money, the lease will be moving forward all the time. And that's how we got there. So that's another possibility in and of itself.
Yeah. Anyone else? Bill?
The public safety complex, as it was originally conceived back in the time when I was sitting on your board, was driven by two considerations, primary considerations. One, recognizing the need for additional fire housing accommodations and a new police facility, given the state of condition of the existing facility. It was felt that by combining the two departmental needs into one facility, that there would be economy of scales that were very significant to be realized. The second consideration and a primary consideration was location. And locationally, at that point in time, those that were discussing the concept felt that closer into the downtown village community was a far more desirable location than to remotely locate this facility on the perimeter of the town. A site was identified that fell within that general criteria, and at the time, it was thought that it would be possible to acquire that site. And you're all familiar with that, off Langdon Street between Cummins and Highland.
Yeah.
That site did not become available, albeit there was yet a facility design suitable to that site. The facility that was designed then has been taken to task by the current chief in his assessment of needs versus the prior assessment of needs. And I don't take issue with that. If there are legitimate differences in needs today from what they were then, I can accept that, given reasonable explanation for what those needs are and the differences that they represent and how it's come to be so much different in the current light. The site that was originally identified has been purportedly told to you folks that it is not available.
Correct.
And today, that's a true statement. But that site, in terms of the diocesan ownership of that land for the most part, is going to change. And it's going to change probably within a 5-year period, if not sooner.
Yeah, I think
Now,
5 years may be we were told it was 5, maybe 10 years before that thing's resolved.
I understand that.
But nonetheless,
I've had some-
5 years is a good, safe number
I've
for...
had some recent discussions myself with people and the circumstances surrounding why it's not currently available. And there is, say, a likelihood that change may come sooner than later relative to what you've been given to understand. I don't dispute what you've been given to understand. If we just shut that site aside for a moment and assume that it's not available, the alternative site that I've heard mentioned here at the table is what was the Rand site, or is now the Alex Ray site. And that's in total about 1.5 acres from river back to the southern property line.
The section that's built up is 1.5 acres.
Pardon?
The section that is built up that you could actually build on is 1.5 acres. The problem is it takes the 16 acres and the rest of it makes it worthless.
Well, in terms of the floodway portion of the property, which is unbuildable, whether you're a municipality or a private interest, that's out of play. So it's on the order of 1.5 acres, maybe as much as 2 acres, because I don't know definitively in the current map scheme of things where the floodway is in relation to its crossing over that property. The building pad that is there was developed in a way that it is out of the floodplain, which I think you all realize. That building pad could be expanded beyond what it is to encompass a larger facility than what the current pad would allow for construction of. The remaining portion of that site that's in the floodplain can be very easily used for parking needs of a facility if it were sited on that location. Now, yes, if you have a 100-year flood event, there's a possibility the parking space might pose a problem, but again, that's a rare occurrence and may, in light of what other things have happened along the riverbed, may not occur as it was once forecast. Having said all that, I feel very strongly that when you look at the fire protection needs of our community, the lion's share of those are right concentrated in the Village District area. The old private businesses, many of which are not fire protected unless they've been renovated since the codes have changed and has made them make that change. But for the most part, most do not have that fire protection internally built into their structures. The institutional protection that is required by the university for their student body that's housed in a concentrated area in that area it is, again, first and foremost in terms of the siting of our facility to meet that need if and when it were to arise. And again, that site at the Rand property, or what was the Rand property, is basically an abutter to the university campus, and as such is as accessible to the campus or to the Village District as it is from the Highland Street location that you're occupying right now.
If I may, we're not talking about shutting down the Highland Street station.
Well, you're getting now to my next question, and that's a wonderful segue you've just given me. I want to understand, before I take a position on any of this, as to what our overall equipment and personnel housing needs are and where they're going to be situated, as it relates to the existing facility that you're in, and any further improvements that can be made to that facility, and what pieces of equipment you would stage at that location, and how that affects the sizing of a joint safety complex at some other location to meet the rest of your housing needs and some of the other needs for specialized space that's not on a continuing use basis that could be served in a joint facility. So with that, I'll ask you if you would give us some idea of what the integrated staging and locational requirements are as you see them.
And we talked about this. The thing is, when we talked about the old plans of a few years ago, every time those plans came up and we reviewed them as a department, and Mr. McAlone was there, he's still in an apartment, we looked at the space needs when you were talking about building one facility, and the word we kept getting back was, in 2 to 3 years, we're going to build a substation to make up for the space, which that was news to us. The intent was for this one is that, okay, we're going to build a station, so we build, realistically, the square footage of what the plan was out at a remote site out in West Plymouth area, the PD site, which falls into play with a study that the town paid a lot of money to have done of your emergency services, and they said with the growth of that end of town, how busy we're getting out in that section, because that section is Zone 3, is our second busiest zone. So
Talking Tenny Mountain Highway.
I'm talking Tenny Mountain Highway, Fairgrounds Road, that area out there. So you also in the fire service have live-in programs. So we move the duty crew out to the new facility with an ambulance, an engine, and then in this current facility, you can have a live-in program, so we could actually double the amount of coverage that you have for little or no cost, because these are students that are coming in, they're trying to get into the career of, firefighting. So they come from the tech, and they actually would live at that facility with some renovations down the road. But we're not talking about mothballing it. And as far as placement of apparatus, taking a look at where the growth is and what the hazards are out there, that sometimes would dictate what, we may have one piece out there one year, and certain events happen, and we have to shift. We got to be able to move and be fluid. If you're talking about we're just going to build one station only, then the square footage design of what we're looking at now would actually increase to help for growth and all that, and then we would definitely have to take into consideration placement. We can't be everywhere, but we've got to take a look at where our busiest segments are.
Having said what you just said now, let's try and put that in some relative perspective. What was the total square footage of the space needs as designed in the facility that was prepared for the Langdon Street site versus the space needs in the facility that you're contemplating building, albeit up on the police station site, since that's what you stated, give us a sense of how the space is allocated.
It's the same square footage. We took the same square footage because we were never thinking about mothballing the station. And I did say this at the committee meetings. If we're going with one station, then this square footage has got to grow so that we can house everything that we have.
Kathy?
Sitting on the committee, what we kept coming back to was supposedly the Langdon Street thing. And we had a public hearing on that last year, if I remember correctly, and you were there, Bill, and one of the comments we made was, that is not enough space. And then you said 20 to 50 years we have to look down the road. So if we don't have 20 to 50 years, we don't have 5 years. We can't wait 5 years because it's not big enough. So what we looked at is, how are we going to get enough space? And we can't base what space we need on a facility that we already determined was no good. We're trying to determine how much space we need on the equipment that we have. Because inadequate space that we already determined, so we shouldn't even be looking at comparing it to Langdon Street because we determined that that wasn't right. So we got rid of that. And the other thing that I'm hearing that we also heard at town meeting last year, and you talked about renovating the Highland Street station, is why do we dump money into Highland Street? We're looking at it at not dumping any more money into Highland Street than we absolutely have to, building this facility, and then redoing that one so that we can have two very good facilities to work with and keep, because you're right, the majority of the stuff is in town. We want to keep that facility for the town, but we, like you guys said at the meeting, we don't want to just keep mothballing that station and keep dumping money in to renovate that station. We're trying to get two decent stations.
I guess I'm still confused from what I've heard, because...
Trace, did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to ask if we could hear from our police chief, and just to speak as a taxpayer, I'm kind of concerned. I really can't judge whether we should go ahead with this until we have more details about, and we're talking 2 stations now on one site. I would have no problem. I think you could construct a warrant article with phase 1 or phase 2 or however you had to do it, but I think for the voters we really need to know a little more specifics. I think there's economies of scale in designing, whether it's 2 buildings or 1 building. It doesn't matter to me. I just think we need to know from the police side. I definitely feel we need a new fire station and we need a new police station. And because we own that land up there, I think that's the best site, and I think the committee's come a long way in dealing with the inadequacies or defects of the other plans and other sites. I think the voters just want to know what the bottom line is, like with everything, and whether we can afford it at this time. And if a big 1 facility is going to be more than 2, or are 2 going to be more than 1, that needs to be explored before we could really give you our judgment.
Steve, do you want to put something into this?
I'm not sure what the question is.
I just want to know, Chief, do you, with this plan, do you have a basic design in mind that would work for the PD, or you haven't gotten that far?
I think the design is a little premature. I think today's meeting is to talk about, a couple years ago, we were talking about 1 complex, 2 departments under 1 roof.
Right.
The committee has decided that there's new direction. We think space that we own, we think that as a committee, we think the new direction is to co-locate both departments adjacent to each other on a piece of property, build the police station first, demo, have the police station move in, demo, and then build the fire station. That's the direction of today's meeting. So talking about a design of the police station or the design of the fire station at this point, I think is a little premature. We're just here to talk about this new direction
Right, so just the concept, but is that okay? I mean, that is satisfactory to you, that you'd be able to meet your needs in whether it's one building or two buildings?
All I need to meet my needs is a building about 9,000 square feet anywhere in this community. And we can do our job.
What I'd like to have someone address or give me an opinion is the idea of drop back to the original proposal, which was to build a fire department. And the site that was available happens to cost $800,000 to get ready for a fire department. And I'm a little concerned that we're missing the point. I mean, we wanted the fire department's the most critical of the two buildings. And I don't think there's any place we can find a site, whether if we buy it or whatever, that we're going to get away with $800,000 by the time you tear down the buildings that are on it and do whatever you have to do. So I'd like somebody to give me an opinion on building the fire department on the southern side of the police department and bite the bullet for the $800,000. John?
I'm really getting confused.
Yeah, so am I.
Are you trying to work on a warrant article that you will send to the town? Are you going to ask, is this what we want? A fire station, police station, rip down, this procedure you've got here now. Are the people going to vote on that, yes or no? Are you going to have figures available, it'll cost this, this, and this when you go for that warrant article? What really disturbs me tonight is there are no handouts showing locations, where it's going to be, telling us what the site's about, and it also could be put on the internet here or whatever it is. That technology where the people at home can see what we're talking about, where we're talking about it. I mean, there's a lot of things missing in here for information that the people should know. I do not care one way or the other, but you gotta do something. We've been living out of a shack, both places, for a long time, and they put up with it for a long time. So we deserve something good that'll last the next 30 or 40 years. I see a problem with that site because it's a state road. They're going to make you put signals in, and they're going to make you put something where if fire trucks are coming out, the signals stop, and this, well, you know how the state is. And we haven't even investigated that. We're at the lowest part of the iceberg right now, and that did the most damage to the Titanic. And I'm worried that this is going to get all hodgepodged again, and then we're going to end up with nothing and go for another 2 or 3 years just trying to straighten it out.
Yeah, I think the problem is we started out to build a fire department on a piece of land that was available, and Dick Piper went away for one meeting, and we came back and we were building a police department. So I think somehow we've either got to go back to square one and talk about the fire department, or I don't think this whole thing's going to fly.
Well, that's what we got to find out from the town, right?
Cappy?
The problem I see is really there's been not enough information given to us. What are the police going to do while the building's being torn down? Where are they going to locate?
The approach that we're taking now would be to build the police department south of the present police department, then tear down the old police department and get the site ready for a fire department.
Still,
that's the plan.
Disruptions.
Oh, yeah.
Scenario, you know?
Well, you'd have the least amount of disruption doing it that way. The question is, do we want a police department, do we want a fire department, or do we want both? And the site we're talking about is the piece of property that we have on North Main Street, or up past the, Mr. Sansucci, what?
Well, I'd kind of like to back the truck up to the beginning of this thing again, where we started talking about a public safety complex. I'll give you a little more information that you may not have. I was on the board when we started the project, as was Bill. Unfortunately, Bill didn't get reelected, so I was left on the board with a few other people. The long and the short of it was we realized as a board that we needed both buildings, not just one, but both. So let's start with the concept we need both buildings. If we're going to build just a fire department, then just a fire department would probably work on the lot we already have up there. And maybe if we tear down the one we have there and put up a brand new one, maybe that would work. I don't know. But the reason we chose the site was for the main reason of the location. Location, location, location. It's like everything else. Unfortunately, the hospital wanted it too, so there became a conflict automatically right there. That site out at the police department has been talked about ever since I was a member of that board, and I was one of the original members along with Mr. Piper here. And we've been going back and forth about that for a long, long time. So I'm not going to belabor that issue. But the thing that killed the real concept, I think, was the cost. Everybody kept hearing $6 million. Well, I don't know where they got the number from, first of all, because the number never really was solid. We never had a solid number for 90% of the project, really.
Yeah, well, we didn't have a site was part of the problem. I mean,
Well, the site, some of the site work had been guesstimated somewhere around $1 million at the time. But that was a guesstimate, as the fellow says. The building itself was a guesstimate too, but it really wasn't completed. The soft goods weren't figured in. We weren't sure it was going to be a 10-year or 50-year building. I mean, the committee really had not settled down on this is exactly what we ought to present to the public. So when the boards changed, the public safety complex went out the window. It's too much money. I don't know how they got the number, or how they figured it was, but that's neither here nor there. Now we're talking about 3 buildings. I don't see economies of scale in 3 buildings, to be very honest with you. And I would dispute what Chief Casino said. That building is going to cost us money. Somebody's going to have to pay to heat it, for the lights, and everything else in that building up there on the hill, if you're going to do what you said you're going to do with it.
I never said it wasn't going to cost money to operate.
Well, you said it wasn't going to cost the town any money. That's what you said.
He was talking about the live-in program.
Right, the personnel that man it.
That's fine, but it's still going to cost the town money. The whole idea of putting everything together was economies of scale on lights, heat, and many other things. Utilization of space and so on and so forth. That's the reason we came up with the concept of that. Now, as far as the personnel issue that you brought up, that's a management problem, so I won't even entertain that as a resident. If you can't manage your men, there's a problem. So the bottom line is, I think that site out there is not the site that I would like to see it go on. I think we might start again at ground zero and figure out maybe a better site. Well, number one. Number two, as far as the cost goes, I haven't heard the cost of either one of these 2 buildings that you're talking about other than the foundation. If we put it on one site, it's going to cost us $800,000 with foundation. The other one's $230,000. Does that include the foundation or not? Some of the site work, but did it say foundation?
That is a guesstimate on that. That is a guesstimate on the concrete also.
Okay, so that includes that.
Right. These are all rough estimates.
No, and I appreciate that.
If I may, I think we're getting off course here a little bit. All the planning of a building, we were tasked with trying to find a location for a firehouse. The lot that we're at, if you tear it down, where are we going to go? What you see on pavement and building is as big as we got. We've already been told, don't even think about taking anything by eminent domain, because we're in for a long, hard battle on that. So we looked at all the information that was brought to us, and collectively, as a group, we said, tax-wise, the best thing is possibly flip-flop the projects. We're just here saying, we're trying to save some money in excavation by flip-flopping the 2 projects. I mean, as far as a building plan and all that, we're not even at that point. We're trying to find out from the public, this is the way we're looking at going for the economy-wise right now. We haven't thrown anything out of the window. We haven't done it. We're just trying to say, this is what we're looking at. If you want us to spend $1 million in dirt work to build the fire station, we'll go ahead and we'll go in that direction. I mean, we keep talking about things that happened way in the past, and we shouldn't be bringing that stuff up, and that's my own opinion on that.
Well, I was just,
Abby?
Another problem that we have when we, two things. It's not entirely true because the meeting before Dick wasn't there, that was one of the things that we left with. Well, another thing that we could possibly do is move the police station and then put the fire station down. So that was brought up before Dick wasn't there. Number two, the other reason that we had with the original fire station up on that is, once again, Bill, we talked about you have to go 20 to 50 years down the road. With that $800,000 to excavate there, that's just barely going to fit that station in there. So there's no potential for growth at all if we put that fire station on the southern part of that lot. So that's another thing that we looked at as a committee. We wanted to listen, we heard what you said, and we wanted to be able to have some potential for growth there. But that isn't going to allow us any if we stick it down at south end.
Right?
I would like to suggest a thought that if that site for both police and fire is the best site of basically what we have, is to rent temporary double-wide office stuff, relocate the fire department over across the street at the TAV area. That seems to be sufficient area for a temporary location, and then you could work that site all in one. You could take down the police building and do all the site work, excavate, and then whatever economy of scale you get with a unified structure.
What site are you talking about now?
You meant PD, relocate to PD.
PD, excuse me, PD.
What site are you talking about, Frank?
What's that?
What site?
Well, across from the present police department, the old, it's TAV Electronics.
Oh.
And Morse's bus.
I don't know. I don't know if it's available.
Well,
the point with this whole piece of property is that we own it.
well, I know, you're going to work that. I'm talking about taking, temporarily relocating the police department right across the streets. So
Yeah.
then you
that's-
get to work that site unified as one.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. Cabby, what?
We did talk about that, and one of the problems with that is it would be very expensive to do that, and we're trying to save the town as much money as we could. Why pay to move them twice?
Well,
we can move
it's-
them once.
yeah.
So that was brought up too, so we did think about that.
Anyone else? John?
I'll
Bill who?
go to Bill.
All right.
My father.
I'd like to keep these comments down to 2 or 3 minutes because we're rehashing a lot of stuff that's already been discussed, and my concern is that we own a piece of property, and that's the only thing going for this. We don't have any other options in terms of land that we can do in a reasonable period of time. At this point in time, I don't think, if we keep this up, we're not going to be able to build it this year or next year anyway. But, Bill?
Come back and ask the question again. The fundamental concept plan for the fire department. What percentage of your equipment would be located out there on Route 3 versus that which would be located in the downtown station? Or is everything intended to be out there on Route 3?
No. You leave an engine and an ambulance in town for the living program. And the rest of the services go out there because we're going to downsize the size of that station to hit the square footage of the needs that we were looking at back when all this started a while ago.
Well, having said that, I would be opposed to moving all of your apparatus out to that site, away from that location.
Like I said, I'm not moving it all out of there.
As far as your aerial equipment, you are. You just indicated you'd leave a pumper and an ambulance.
Mm-hmm. And then the call guys would come the other way with the aerial device.
I, again, would not support that concept for the reason that I think your aerial equipment is needed most downtown, proximate to the university, and
And up there it is proximate to the...
in the village.
The difference in distance from Highland Street to the university and from the South or North Main Street, I don't think is significant. In terms of time, I doubt there's any difference.
I would disagree with that.
John?
Now, my understanding, the way you want to solve this is just put on the warrant, do you, people of the town of Plymouth, want this type of a concept? That's what you're trying to find.
Well, no, we've got to go further than that. Do we want to build a police department for X number of dollars on the site south of where the police department is, tear down the police department and use that site? We have to go to the town. We can't go to the town with any more of this debating stuff. We've got to go with a plan, a budget, and a location. And the location is south of the present police department, and I think the plan is not that difficult to come up with because I'm sure Steve's already got something in mind.
But right here now, you don't have any figures, you don't have anything.
It wouldn't be that difficult.
You want to know about the concept. So you're going to have to present it to the town. Do you want this concept as it is now? You know they're going to vote it down, then you got to start all over.
Right, that's correct.
But if we had figures to say this will save the town this much money, we're only going to spend this, we're going to do this, and work that into the warrant article, that might work.
Well, the warrant article is designed to save the town money in site work on the, we can quantify that, but as I see it, the warrant article that the committee has come up with is to build a new police department south of the present police department, tear down the present police department. This is all simultaneously. We can have the budget figures and everything ready to go, and maybe do some foundation work for the new fire department. That would be the warrant article. The alternative warrant article is, okay, let's build the fire department south of the police department, spend $800,000 in site work, and talk about the police department at a later date.
Yes, but this is all supposed to be presented at the public hearing before we can make a decision.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
John, this meeting was put together just the concept of the land, of where we want the location to be.
Right. That's
Nothing
what we're
else.
talking about.
And it's not going to be a warrant article.
Well,
The whole
hopefully if we can
concept
get
will
over the
be-
hump, it will be.
This will be one of many meetings. It's going to be one of many meetings.
Can I just, my point earlier too, this was just to talk about this new direction, this new concept.
That's correct. Right.
All of the things that I'm hearing really should be phrased in, at the next public hearing, can you bring X, Y, and Z? And that's where the committee now, once the board gives us a sense of direction that this is the way we should be heading, all the questions I'm hearing tonight are what come in the next phases of this discussion.
Yeah, I think if we go with, if the decision is to build a police department south of the present facility, tear down the present police department, and prepare that site for, foundation work or whatever, we can quantify that at the next public hearing. We can come up with numbers and square feet and everything else.
I'd just like to offer one statement in support of the idea of doing this in the order that Chief Clogston proposed, and that is that if we build a new police department, even if it's ultimately a facility that will encompass both departments, but start with the police department on that site north of town, the police department stays where they are while it's being built. Right. The fire department stays where they are until their new facility is built. And then when it's time to rebuild the new the new fire department, the police department isn't going to have to move into some temporary facility while the new police department's being built.
And it's going to cut your cost of moving the biggest part of the police department, as I see it, is the communications equipment that's got to be relocated. If we do that on a temporary basis, we're going to spend just as much money as if we did it on a permanent basis. But
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may, John.
Is the police station that you're going to build, the plan I saw was directly on top of the other police station. That was during the committee. Is that police station going to be in back of the police station so that the present police station stays as it is?
No. No, the new police station would be south of the present police station. We go in,
Fire station was going to be.
right, and then we build that,
Going to build that, and then you're
move the
gonna tear
police
it.
into the new, and then you'd have the site for the fire department. So,
So what the concept is that you would use that south lot for the police station.
right, where you're talking a
Once you
couple
get that
$100,000 in site work as opposed to,
Once you do that, you then destroy the
start over
police
again.
station and start with
Right.
the fire department, which would be
Right.
approximately $260,000. I think that's the whole crux of this,
right,
of this public meeting. And we've got fixed cost on, as fixed as you could possibly be when you're in excavating, of the two sites. Whether they're right, wrong, or indifferent, I don't think makes a lot of difference tonight. All we're doing is saying, if they want that site to have these two stations, then the concept is to build a police station south of the one that is now, and then later on build a fire station where the police station is, and that's all we should be concerned with tonight. We're not concerned with design work, we're not with anything else. We're only concerned with the location and the site work. And if we can get that done tonight, then...
The town's got to vote on it.
What?
Can't, John, because the town's got to vote on it.
I'm not
oh,
saying
no,
that.
we're
I'm
trying to
saying
formulate a warrant article. How do we go with it? Yeah.
we have got to have some kind of consensus so that we can draw a warrant article. We can't forever go on with that other site, which was already proved to, there would never be able to be any expansion to that site, and it would be just enough for the police station. I don't care whether we have leather seats, I don't care whether, whatever we have is not, this isn't the time to do that. The only time that we can, the only thing that we want in the public meeting tonight for is, with this type of concept, can we move forward and start to work on a warrant article for that part of it, or at least have public meetings to have it indicated that this is something, a base that we can start working on. We've got a lot of problems, we've got a lot of the work ahead of us, but this is what we've got to start with. The thing. We can reiterate all we want and spend the next 5 years talking about the site that could have been, but we've got to make a decision as to a start somewhere. We can't continually fight old battles.
Yes, sir. The back.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sam Sargent, and I have been around Plymouth for a long time, long time. Seen the water come up lots of times, and we all have seen the white lines over on the station and the interval. I would feel very, very uncomfortable if all of our equipment was located on this side, one side of the river. You know, Baker River does come up, and I know we have flood control dams and all sorts of innovations that would reduce the isolation of different towns, but it happens. People in New Orleans will tell you it happens. I would very much like to see a substantial presence of fire equipment and emergency equipment in general located near the center of town. Thank you.
Mr. Sansucci.
I just want to make sure I understand this correctly tonight. What you're asking us to do is choose that site with one program, one way or the other.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
That's all I...
Do we want, to me, there's two options. We take the site, we go south of the present police department, build a new police department, tear down the old one, and prepare that site for a fire department. The other option is to spend $800,000 doing site work where the police, on the southern lot, and go for a warrant article for a fire department. And the warrant article would be specific, you know, of how it's going to be a building, all the design work, cost, location, et cetera. Because I don't think the town's going to want to go into another debate on where to put it or what we have available or what we could have done. I think we got to get down with, somebody said at the last town meeting that we want choices. And I don't see that. I think the choice we have to go with is take it or leave it. Here's the building, here's the price, here's the location, and if you want it, fine. If you don't, don't. And if the town votes it down, then we just start over again and we can keep this up forever. Anyone else? Bill?
I disagree, with take it or leave it, to be sure. I would ask that you add to your presentation, whenever you're going to present this back to the town in another public hearing, what the site development cost would be for the Alex Ray property with the building pad expanded to encompass a joint facility at that location.
Well, that we could do that, but my way of thinking is we're running out of time, and we've got a piece of property, and we have a plan or an option, one of two options, and we've got to decide which one we're going to accept and then go with that. Patrice?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to express my support for the new direction. I think it's a great idea to move ahead after all these years of discussing filling the needs of our fire and police departments. I really don't care if it's one or two buildings on that site. I think when we go ahead and have somebody propose what they need, as long as it meets the needs of our two chiefs agree that it'll take care of their needs, it's fine with me. I am going to be looking at the bottom line. That's what I have to do.
John?
Just one question. Can the selectmen spend the low figure for the pad and the excavation of $230,000 without the town voting on it?
I don't, it's part of the package. I wouldn't want to try it. I think we should come up with a number. The number can include building a new police department, tearing down the old one and leaving the lot empty. Or if you want to add another $200,000 or $300,000, do basic foundation work for a fire department. Frankly, the town should be looking at one facility. And if that's a police department, then we'll vote on that and deal with the fire department later. I think, as again, the big advantage of this piece of property is we own it.
Yes, I agree.
And, Alex Ray for $385,000 plus site work plus everything else, we're going to be up to $1 million with that.
I'd say right now, if you can do that, go ahead and start and do it.
All right. Paul?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that this public meeting tonight has accomplished what it was supposed to. This was only intended because the public had the right to hear why this committee had to change its direction. That's all it was ever meant to be. We're going far. I think the committee now takes back everything that it's heard from its concerned citizens, can even redirect itself at its next meeting, address those concerns that they've heard here tonight. But tonight was meant to give an explanation owed to the public on why we were going in one direction and we've changed tracks and going in another direction. Not for any other reason. There's going to be many public hearings from now through the middle of January. And we need as many public hearings so that the public will be part of the process this time.
All right. I believe we should close the public hearing at this point in time. On the agenda, what do we have now? Non-public?
No.
Nothing. There's no non-public. Public comments are
I take a vote to end the meeting.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
I second it.
moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. Those in favor? Aye. Meeting's adjourned.
Did what I say?
Yes.